Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and tonight we're privileged to have the wonderful new Australian author, Gallo, and who is the author of Gabriella Vita Mia. And thank you, Anne, for joining us this evening. Please tell us about Gabriella, about the book.
Thank you, Bradley. Well, this book has taken a very long journey. The original story that I wrote about a family migrating to Australia, I wrote about 30 odd years ago. And this is an offshoot to that original book I wrote. Because as I was writing that first book, Gabriella's story sort of wanted to come out more. And I decided to invest in her life by retelling her journey of entering womanhood from her point of view in a first person memoir type of genre, where I was able to write more deeply through her emotions and feelings and what she went through at the time. It's set in 1975. It is a little bit about just not all of it, but a little bit of my own life experience as a migrant woman in the, I was 9 when I came to Australia from Italy. Yeah. And so that there is some components of this, of Gabriella, that are loosely based my own experiences, but it is a fictional, I have to say this, it's fictional. Yeah. So the family was created and her journey. And so she's a bit of an introvert. So a lot of the story is written through a monologue of her thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. No, it's a very personalized book in the sense that she is expressing herself very vulnerably as well for a young girl, and asking herself questions that for a young woman is still relevant, but there's still that naivety, which makes the story very authentic to her growth through the story. I think also the affliction of that culture mixed with coming to the new country and her family living in an older style of traditional family values that they had in their country. I like that contrast of her challenges, trying to fit here and meet them as well. And then, of course, finding the give and take very, very tiring. So, no, I was very impressed with that story. So did you have a lot of family helping you with this story? Were there characters in that had stories you'd absorbed into some of these already created characters you had? Or because they're very authentic, like they're very real, as way as you said, it makes it almost interesting to think, is that person you knew, or some of them, not all of them, but yeah.
The father figure has, my father has come through. And when I first started writing this book, he did know about it, and he was impressed that I was going to write about him. He's since, but so he's not likely to sue me.
But you didn't write him that badly. It's actually quite an interesting character, because the father character, and being a male myself when reading it, because it had a very female-orientated strength in the story, which is natural because it's a female character. But the male characters I've always observed, because it intrigues me how authors a lot write other opposite sex characters, because you're a female. I was wondering how you expressed and wrote those male characters in the book. And the father particularly struck me as almost very godfatherly, but that old school Italian style, but just a lot of compassion, but just driven by the integrity he needs to maintain. And I thought that was quite an interesting conflict for him.
He was very protective of his daughters. So he was easy to write. And then also the brother Enzo was, because I've never had a brother. Yeah. So he was a little bit harder, but I've raised 3 boys, and I kind of knew how to, expand. Yeah, because so my children, although when I wrote the book, my children were babies, and then by the time I sort of started rewriting again, because I've had lots of stops and starts and putting aside, got stuck in being addicted to education, and sort of put the book away, and I've written this story on, like on my way home from work on the train, I'm writing or
whenever
different, anywhere I could, because I was determined to finish it. But life got in the way so many times, and I had to put it aside. So I'm really, really excited that I've been able to get to this point to be able to see it come to life.
And share it with everyone, share it with the reader. I think
I've got quite a few family and friends eager. None of my sisters have been allowed to read this because they read the first one and said, oh yeah, whatever, and now I'm thinking, no, you're not reading it until it gets published. So they're a little bit sore with me because they haven't had to read. Yeah, they haven't.
I think they'll be happy. I think they'll be very happy with it. I mean, one of the things about it is, as a story, like I say, it's very hard to write a semi-truth and be involved with people or having utilised elements of to create characters in your stories and get those voices right that are still individual to the characters in the story, but represent pieces of those people and of course they may know that when you read it. But one of the things I was curious of, was there anything in this book that you felt that you had to take out, that you had written, as you said, you've constructed a lot of years in it? Was there anything you took out of it that you thought, that's always important to ask, because
because the original story that I wrote 30 odd years ago, the mother character is killed, like my mother was. And in this version, I decided I've got the power and control. My mother was killed, hit by a car, when we were just a few years in Australia, and it was a bad time in our lives, obviously.
Absolutely.
But when I wrote the first family story, she was killed, and I thought to myself, no, I don't want that to happen. So it will never happen in any other books that I'll write, because I want. And in the background, I wanted the mothers, the Italian mamas, to come out, because their stories also need to be told, because they were they came to a foreign country, and in Italy, no woman worked. She usually was at home. Yet here, there was no other option but to help the family finances, and they normally went to cleaning jobs, or, as in this instance, working in a factory. So as my mother did as well. And that bit, I did as well when I was in my, just a small stint. So there is some elements there where I worked in a clothing manufacturing place as a young woman. But I wanted to, even though the mother in this book doesn't say much, there's not that much. And the struggle for me was, how do I have conversations that I know that they're in Italian, and not go too overboard with the Italian language and phrases? I didn't want to offset the reader by creating too much dialogue that was so that there's a bit of it. So, but I hope that she's come across as well as a subordinate woman in this relationship that has accepted, like a lot of the women who migrated here, accept their role, that they continue to, in a different culture, missing their. So I'm hoping that I can explore that era as well. The early 60s and 70s, where a lot of not only Italians, Greeks, migrated here and had to adapt to a new lifestyle.
Well, I had some friends that came from Chile around that time, with the whole revolution happening over there in Chile and the war, and they came to Australia as immigrants, and had the same culturally difficult time. So yes, the whole transition of that period is very, was a very high point of immigration for Australia, I think. And, and you touched on it really well. So when you had this book, you said you worked on it for a number of years. When did you decide you wanted to create it as a story, you were writing in pieces, but when did you decide to sit down and say, right, I want to make that book and I want to put it out and I want to share this story?
Well, you might know, the viewers may not know that I left school very young and picked it up. And short story writing has led me to where I am today because I did correspondence courses, all sorts of things that I was interested in doing. But my grammar, because I left school so early, my grammar was very poor. And so that when I was doing the short story writing courses, they'd say, lovely ideas and plots and stuff, but your grammar, you need to fix that. And that's when I went to further my education. I started doing correspondence English. I even did year 12 English. And as a mature age person, sat with the year 12 kids in an exam. That was interesting. And then eventually I ended up at university and did a number of degrees, got addicted to studying. And so the book kept being put away. And I did a master's in conflict resolution and I thought, that's it, I'm finished. And I'll concentrate on the book. And that's when I'm on the train from work, I'd be writing. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I thought, working with lawyers, I thought, I want to learn their language. So let me go back to uni and get a law degree. So then I put the book away.
Yep.
And so, in 2015, at the ripe old age of 57, I was admitted as a lawyer. So a late bloomer. And so that's all done and dusted. I'm now working as a lawyer. And I thought, well, I've got one unfinished business to do. And then last year I said, I have to do this. And I concentrated on it last year and even went to a workshop at the Victorian Writers Centre to how to finish your novel.
Yeah.
That was good to sort of get me going. I did the 30,000 word challenge, September 30,000
yes.
word. Yeah, 1,000 words per day. And that got me going. And when I finished it, I had a friend edit it for me because, as I said, I still have a few issues with my grammar.
Yes.
And I tried a few agents. They all said, unknown author. Yeah, no. And I thought, oh no. I tried to push my short stories, my book ideas over the years, got rejection letters after rejection. And I said, I'm not going there. And when I saw your advert in a magazine, I thought, that's the way I'm going to go. I'm going to self-publish. So I was really happy that by way of chance, I got to learn about your organisation.
Well, we're glad to help. It's wonderful. So, I mean, I'm glad to bring in. That's what we design ourselves to do, to help yourself and others just get that stepping stone and just have a pad where they can, build a profile and build a modest success and hopefully lead to bigger and better things. That's the goal.
Yes. So, one day this book's going to be a movie. You know that.
Oh, that's good. And if I can ask, who's going to play the lead actress?
We'll have to think
Who
about
would
that.
Who would you see?
Actually, interestingly enough, at one point I entered a competition, might have been 26, 27, no, maybe 30 years ago, with Film Victoria. Entered my script because I did script writing as well.
Yeah.
And script writing is a very good building block for authors because it does challenge you to get out all that stuff, that's surplus in a scene, and it creates a better way of writing, and I learned a lot from that. So this story, but then it was much different. It was about the family.
Yeah.
So I have got ambition, you see.
You still didn't answer the question. Who do you see as playing the lead actor?
I'm not going to put it out there because I might offend someone. I'll be thinking on that one.
Don't worry. Look, if it comes off being an Australian film with an international appeal, it'll probably be Nicole Kidman. She plays everything. So You know,
has to be a dark-headed girl.
I tell you what, Nicole Kidman could play an Aboriginal. She's fantastic. Like literally everything she does is so different in every role. So from that point of view, like just writing this book, you had a lot of periods where you put it aside. Were there any other challenges in writing this book for you? Like more specifically about the book directly, not so much the situation where you were studying so much and having your life with children and such being a slower path. But what were in the story, in the story itself, in the challenges of the book?
Yeah, I suppose it was towards the end of the book, it gets really dark. When Gabriella,
don't give away the ending.
Oh, no. But I'm just saying that I didn't want to dwell on that dark side. I made that brief. It could have been, I could have expanded on it, but I felt I didn't want it to be too dark. I didn't want to draw the reader down too much. You know, I wanted them to experience what she was going through, but not be drawn down too much. So I did specifically not write long sort of chapters about that period.
So is that the challenge, was trying to stop yourself from trying to write and indulge in some of the elements of the stories you wanted to explore, but you didn't feel that was the right sort of way to do that for the reader? Is that what you mean?
No, I think that it was more to do with the fact that less is more. What I'm meaning, where I thought, yes, I might have put a paragraph there of what she's gone through. I could have expanded it, but I chose to keep it short so that the reader would know that's what she's gone through. So
it wasn't the primary element.
I didn't want to dwell too much on that.
Yeah. So when you say, so what would you say if you had one or a few? What would you say was a writing quirk of yours? Like, you know, do you wear a particular pair of socks while you're writing? Do you use a particular pen? Do you have to wear a certain hat? I mean, you know, some people wear party hats, some wear straw hats when they're writing. What sort of your quirk do you have? Do you have to write outside, inside?
No, it's usually when I'm exhausted and that I know I have to do it, and I have to sort of, and it's at night, and I'm thinking, if I could do this, I'll be able to go to bed, you know. So I'm not a morning person.
Not a morning person. Wow.
Not a morning person. So to me, you know, you'll find me writing at 1 o'clock in the morning rather than 1 o'clock, in the afternoon or whatever. But well, because I'm still I'm working at the moment, and interestingly, you know, like people sort of think I would write if I only had time. But you've got to be in that frame of mind. And I was unwell. I had another chapter in my life a few years back where I was totally unwell. I had a little bit of I won't go into too much details, but I had another challenge in my life where I didn't see it coming. And it left me brain dead in the sense that I couldn't function. I had to deal with some health issues and had plenty of time. Not an ounce of creativity. Couldn't do anything. Couldn't even the only thing probably I did a little bit of was read a little bit to sort of get the mind to. So I think I work better when I've got a lot on my plate and I set myself the challenge and I say, you've got to do this. So then I try to, you know, myself. So I do it at night where I don't know, I seem to have more energy to think.
No, I understand that too. Like, and a lot of things happen during the day too. You know, with younger children that you've had as well, of course, you would have had very little time during your daytimes to do a lot running around. So nighttime, you would have got a habit, of course, I understand that, to set yourself in the time of your time that's quiet. So what are your plans for future books? Is Gabriella going to come up again for us in a sequel, or what are you doing now?
I'm already writing now. One of the things I would like to continue on this story. Probably there is another book there. I won't give too much away, but yes, so I believe that you write and you can write. You don't have to write in front of a computer or with a note. So the first thing comes in my head where I imagine the scenes or where I imagine the plots. And so I think what's going to happen and how am I going to introduce that? Where am I going to put the twist? So at the moment, it's creating ahead. I've got a friend of mine who said, "Oh, Anne, give it up. You've had so much time with this fictional family. Move on to another story."
Yeah, that's true. It is. Like, are we going to get this book in another 30 years? Is that what they're saying?
It'll be when I've passed over.
There it is. Exclusive. Gabriella 2, finally. 2050.
No. I think I will project that I will have this one finished a lot quicker. A lot. Yeah, when I'm not getting younger. So.
So what was for you in part the hardest scene for you to write in this book? If I can delve into that. I mean, you said the dark side of the end was a challenge. Yeah. What other elements were there that you found?
The violence in the marriage, the unhappiness that she had. And as I said, I didn't dwell too much on that. I didn't want to but that was pretty hard. Just loss of control. And I think that she has it in a few different, parts of her life. Yeah. No ability to make decisions for yourself and to be able to live your life in how you would like. Yeah. And as I sort of kind of said recently to a friend, it's almost like you're first the property of your father, and then you become the property of your husband, like a chattel. And I think that's where Gabriella got stuck, where she thought marriage would free her to give her more control of the life, whereas I think for her it was a shock to find that it didn't.
And you wrote that really well, her naivety and excitement, and of course the realization hitting her like a brick in one way. So, but yeah, no, it was good. And of course, the natural question for that is, and if you're happy to, I'm curious, did you inflect a lot of yourself into Gabriella? A lot of writers do that. They have an impression of their own self stories into the characters they write.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you had an emotional connection to Gabriella that you were expressing in that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that when we first write, we do, write from the core of us, of how we see, project. But I have to say that I've created that inner voice of this character, some of the experience, and actually, can I say that she got to do a lot more things that I did when I was that age.
You mean you spoiled her? Well, yes. Sometimes that's part of it. You get to live your fantasy through your characters too.
Got to go to the Italian dances. We never got to do that as a family. My father would never allow us to go to that. So she, there is some elements, but I think that I'd like for her to be standing up on her own and not that much connection to me. And only to sort of say that, yes, I lived through the era, and I wanted to create the era and what was happening around her, love of fashion, and so that came through. So what else was there that you asked? I can't remember. Did I sidetrack the question?
No, I was just asking how you inflected yourself into the character of Gabriella, if it was you in there. But as you say, you've tried to keep her honest to herself as well as writing it. And as I said, I think the relationship with her husband, I'm hoping that you've never experienced that. That'd be terrible. So I'm hoping that you had a much happier, better marriage to a degree.
Let's just not go there.
Okay. So anyway, sorry about that. When you were younger, like when did you really start learning and understanding the power of story, of writing? Like when you realized that language had certain powers that you could control and design?
Yeah. Well, because when I, as I said, I had to leave school. I started working. I'll get the violin out now. Some people sort of say I started working at 13 in a business that had a bit of a fruit shop. So there you go. scoop. And then at 14, my father decided to buy that shop. So that component is very real to some of the experiences I had. Yeah. And my escapism was reading. So that I got a lot of joy to read. And then I just thought, I think I can create characters too. I can make stories to create things to happen the way I want them to happen, so it's almost like an escapism.
Absolutely.
To kind of have some power when you've lost any control of what you can do in your life. You want to create. Yeah.
But when you're young, were you speaking English well at that age still? Like at 9, 10, you said you came to Australia, like you would still be speaking fairly strong Italian?
Well, we as I said, I went straight into grade 3 and didn't speak a word of it.
Did it take long? Did you have a coaching?
It took a few years, a few years, and then it sort of kind of became common to us. We didn't understand any different really after a while. But as I said, it was the English words. The English language is a hard language to learn.
Yeah,
if you miss the building blocks of the structure and the grammar, it's pick up again. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So that writing age around 14, 15, that's obviously too. You're going through your own other teenage transitions. So you're naturally creative. You want to express yourself more. You're probably feeling that, like Gabriella, you're probably feeling that little bit of a restrictive, family model where you needed to have some life or some indulgence and enjoyment of your own. And of course, writing in your own mind is I think for a lot of young people, I think a great way to express themselves.
And you will be pleased to know that my dad, as a birthday gift to me one year, gave me my first typewriter. Because he knew that I worked really hard to help with the family business, so he did value that, and I can say that he encouraged it too.
Oh, good. He must have been going deaf, because there's nothing more annoying than a typewriter going at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to sleep after, tick, 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 tick. I remember I used to get screamed at, stop typing. So let me ask you, do you have a lot of unfinished or half drafted or unpublished books that you've got cluttered around, sitting around, that you've noted on for the last 20 years as well? Or is this one really the primary option you've done? Or
no, that's because, as I said, the first one was the family story, and I've extracted that. I did have lots of different ideas along the way. Like when I put that aside, I even had a book idea when I was a young mum with 3 kids that, and I left work and I wanted to write one about a career at home and the challenges that a woman has with, and that, I tried to pick that a bit, that didn't go anywhere. But as far as other ideas of novels, I haven't, as I said, I've been stuck in this time warp with this family. So that's my
wow.
If I do write something different, I want it to be comical. I don't want it to be dark. I want it to be funny. So it'll be something. Sometimes, like I sort of try to be a jokester, and some people say don't give up your day job, but I like to sort of have a bit of humour. I think humour is one of the greatest assets we can have in our life.
Absolutely.
We're always going to be knocked down one way or the other. Something's going to come along and knock us down. We've got to get ourselves up. And if we've got a sense of humour,
Absolutely. One of the things you could do to make Gabriella even more interesting and humorous would be give her children and watch her raise them. That's always a story and a half with mothers telling children's stories. But so with the artistic process you created, not protest, but the process that you created, did you find were there any difficulties in the writing process, the editing process, publishing process? What did you find was more difficult for you, having had, as you say, an involvement with this family for so long, a personal connection to them, you've raised them through this story? What was the most difficult part of this process for you?
I think the most difficult part was the changing tenses, in the sense of you've got Gabriella, sort of thinking about something that happened, and then making the chapter in the now and here sort of, and it was kind of hard for me to try and work through how to make it work whereby she's thinking about what happened the other day, and then she's in the present tense, and so that it was a bit jarring for me because as I said, the grammar was try and get it right, but and also creating scenes that you add sound and a mood and the, I suppose, the weather, noting the weather, creating the atmosphere. Sometimes we go too much on trying to focus on one area that we forget to add in the other elements. If she's like sometimes, like one of the scenes I put in the tram, the busy Sydney Road in Coburg where the trams click by, so that sort of those sounds in the background. But and trying to expand in that and add in if I sort of saw that it was too wooden, the scene too much in a voice or whatever wasn't going to make the story very readable. No. So I tried to make sure that I added some of those elements of the surroundings and the noise.
Well. You did that really well. So, like I said, because it is hard to get all the senses. A lot of writers forget that there are, the 5 or 6 senses we have, or whatever they are, and how those things affect us in those moments as well. And yes, heightened senses. There are always going to be, what we see or what we hear are heightened senses, but then there are smells and touches that we feel too. So there's elements, and you've got to create a character in the 3D or the whole person to give the reader a full feeling. No, you did that really well. So if I can ask too, what would you say, like you've gone to a number of courses, you've done a number of styles of writing, you've learned some skills in writing and done law and studied a lot. What would you give in advice to aspiring writers who want to get to where you are and do what you've done?
Well, I'm not sure. I also, at one stage, joined a creative writing group as a young mum. I had the kids were, in childcare for 2 hours of the week, and I got to enjoy. I'm an advocate of writing groups. They're just wonderful spaces for writers to go to. Neighbourhood houses, wonderful places for the community, just people to meet. You've got a lot of people out in the homes, maybe young mums or elderly people who want to get out and mingle with other people. So for me, that has been a really great support over the years, to the point that I contacted a neighbourhood house in the area that just opened up, wanting to join a writing group. And she said, well, you sound so enthusiastic about writing. Would you lead this writing group? And that's how I got to facilitate writing groups in the early 1990s, actually. And that was, like the first session, I had 17 inspiring writers wanting sort of...
Your expertise.
From me, and I thought, I've got to inspire these people. And I think that everyone has a story to tell. In fact, they're speaking to a few of my friends, and they're saying, I've got an interesting life story I'd like to tell. And actually, even an elderly cousin of mine said, my story is interesting too. I migrated here too. And she says, if I dictated to you, would you write it for me?
Yes.
So I think, and I always encouraged the writing groups that there was one that I took specifically how to write your life story.
Yeah.
Journal writing. And one of the things that helped me, actually, it's interesting too, is that when I was 16, I wrote in my diary for a whole year. Most of it is boring. Got up, had a shower, or, all that, just very boring. But there were snippets in there that I was able to, and I reread it again before I started rewriting the book, so that it would focus me. this, I think I was 16 in 1974, giving my age away, but I don't care. Yeah, so I always encourage people to do the journals, write from the heart, and the story will come out. The editing, that other stuff will get done eventually, but free flow writing, where you don't have the editor in your head, is the best, because you get to the core of what you want to say.
Absolutely, yeah. Chip away, make the stone, and then chip it down. Yeah. It's great. Just write without worry. Just freedom. I love it. Well, Anne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brad.
It's wonderful tonight for sharing all that with us. And Gabriella, La Vita Mia is a beautiful book, and you've done a great job, and I'm very excited about it coming out in December. Bookstores everywhere where books are sold and online. So please grab a copy and help Anne fulfill the next phase of her journey and her dream of bringing Gabriella to the world. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.